If you feel stuck in that skinny fat zone where you're not lean, but you're also not muscular, this video is for you. Recomp is the fastest way to change how you look without bouncing between extreme bulks and painful cuts, but only if you do it the right way. In the next minutes, you'll learn exactly when Recomp works, the biggest mistakes that keep skinny fat bodies looking the same, and the simple training, macros, and tracking rules that turn eye workout into visible muscle and a tighter waist. Watch while you work out and learn while you train. Part 1. What recomposition actually is and why it happens. Recomposition means two things happening in the same phase of training. You are reducing fat mass while also adding muscle tissue. Muscle gain, in real physiology, is a net positive balance of muscle protein over time, meaning you build more than you break down across days and weeks. Fat loss is a net reduction in stored body fat, meaning you are drawing from fat reserves to cover energy needs. The key point is that your scale weight can stay almost unchanged while your body is changing dramatically, because fat and muscle are different tissues with different water and glycogen behavior. This is not a fantasy concept. Controlled research and real-world data repeatedly show that certain people can lose fat and gain lean mass at the same time, especially beginners, people returning after time off, and people starting with higher body fat. You also see it in some trained lifters when training quality is high and protein intake is strong, even if the changes are smaller and slower. The practical takeaway is simple. Recomp is not the fastest route to either extreme, but it is a legitimate route to getting leaner while still improving physique, strength, and performance, instead of feeling flat and weaker during a cut. To understand why Recomp is possible, you need a smarter view of energy balance than surplus builds muscle, deficit burns fat. That rule is directionally true, but it ignores where energy goes inside the body. Your body is not a single bank account with one outcome. It's closer to a system with multiple budgets: maintenance of organs, movement, heat, training recovery, and tissue change. When you lift, you create a signal that says, this muscle is required. And when protein is available, your body has raw material to respond. Under those conditions, you can still be in a small overall deficit while directing some incoming energy toward muscle repair and growth. Here's the constraint that keeps it scientific. Recomposition is usually about tight margins. Gaining muscle tissue requires energy and amino acids, and losing fat requires an overall energy shortfall across time. When the deficit is huge, you make fat loss easier, but you make muscle gain harder because training quality drops and recovery gets limited. When the surplus is huge, you make muscle gain easier, but fat loss unlikely. Recomp lives in the middle. Training creates a strong muscle-building signal. Protein supplies the building blocks, and your overall energy intake stays close enough to maintenance that performance and recovery remain high. Now let's translate the muscle side into plain biology. Muscle mass changes based on the relationship between muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. Resistance training raises synthesis for a long window after the session, and it can also reduce breakdown when nutrition supports recovery. Dieting, especially aggressive dieting, tends to push breakdown higher and can blunt synthesis by lowering training performance and recovery. Recomp works when you repeatedly spike synthesis with high-quality training, while limiting breakdown with adequate protein, smart calorie control, and enough recovery that you can keep training hard week after week. Protein is not a magic macro, but it is the most direct lever for protecting and building muscle in a recomposition phase. Higher protein increases the availability of amino acids needed for repair, and it also supports satiety, which helps you keep energy intake controlled without feeling like your willpower is on fire. A practical range that works well for recomposition is roughly 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, which covers most lifters from beginner to advanced. Distributing that protein across 3 to 5 meals also helps because each dose supports synthesis more effectively than dumping everything into one meal. Training is the engine of recomposition, not good macros. You need a stimulus strong enough that your body has a reason to invest resources into muscle tissue, even while you are leaning out. That stimulus comes mainly from mechanical tension and enough weekly volume performed close to failure with good technique. For hypertrophy-focused work, most people thrive with sets in the range of 6 to 12 reps for big compound lifts and 8 to 15 reps for accessory work, taken to about 1 to 3 reps short of failure. If you stop every set far from hard effort, you reduce the growth signal and recomp becomes more like dieting while exercising. The word hard set matters here because it separates effective training from activity. A hard set is one where the final reps slow down and you are genuinely close to your limit while still maintaining form. Those last challenging reps are often called effective reps because they recruit high-threshold muscle fibers and create the kind of tension that pushes adaptation. Recomp likes training that is consistent, measurable, and progressive. Progress does not have to mean adding weight every session. It can mean adding 1 rep, adding 1 set, improving technique, or increasing the load after you've earned it with clean reps. Weekly volume gives you the second big lever. Most people recomp well with around 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, depending on training age, recovery, and how close to failure they train. Beginners often do better near the lower end because they grow from less, and their recovery capacity is still developing. Advanced lifters may need more total quality work, but they also need better fatigue management because hard training plus dieting stress can crush performance if you push volume too high. A reliable structure is 3 to 5 resistance sessions per week, keeping exercise selection stable long enough to track progress. Next, you need to understand nutrient partitioning without falling into supplement store myths. Nutrient partitioning is simply where the energy and nutrients you eat end up, stored as fat, stored as glycogen, used for immediate work, or used for tissue repair. Resistance training improves partitioning because it makes muscle more insulin sensitive and more ready to store glycogen and use amino acids for recovery. That matters in recomp because it means a higher percentage of what you eat supports training and muscle maintenance instead of being stored as fat. Carbohydrates fit into this because they support output. Glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrate in muscle, and it fuels hard sets, higher volume, and better performance across a session. When carbs are too low for your personal needs, training quality often drops, and with it, the recomp signal drops. That does not mean low carb cannot work, but it usually means you need to be very deliberate about training volume and recovery. For many lifters, keeping carbs higher around training days improves performance, makes progressive overload easier, and keeps workouts feeling powerful instead of sluggish. Insulin deserves a quick reality check because it's one of the most misunderstood topics in fitness. Insulin is a storage hormone, yes, but storage is not automatically fat gain. Insulin helps move nutrients into cells, including muscle cells that have just been trained and are hungry for glycogen and repair. Fat gain is driven by sustained energy surplus over time, not by insulin spiking in isolation. In recomp, insulin sensitivity and nutrient delivery to muscle can improve with training, adequate carbs, and better body composition. That combination helps you train harder, recover faster, and keep partitioning tilted in the right direction. Now let's talk about the reason so many people think recomp stopped working when the plan is actually drifting. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically all the movement you do outside the gym. Walking, standing, fidgeting, errands, stairs, and general daily motion. When you diet, NEAT often drops without you noticing because your body is trying to conserve energy. That can erase the deficit you thought you created, turning recomp into stalled maintenance. One of the most practical fixes is a consistent step target, like 8,000 to 12,000 steps per day, tracked the same way every week. Adaptive thermogenesis adds another layer. When you push into a deficit, your body can become more efficient, burning fewer calories for the same tasks, partly through reduced NEAT and partly through subtle metabolic adjustments. The point is not that your metabolism is broken. The point is that your plan must be tracked with trends. If your waist measurement, weekly average body weight, gym performance, and progress photos are not moving the way you expect over several weeks, the answer is usually not a new supplement. The answer is adjusting intake, activity, or training quality while keeping recovery strong. Recovery is the gatekeeper that decides whether your training becomes muscle or just fatigue. Poor sleep reduces training performance, impairs skill and coordination, increases hunger, and makes hard effort feel harder than it should. Stress adds recovery debt, meaning you have less capacity to adapt even if your program and macros are perfect on paper. In a recomposition phase, you are trying to do two demanding things at once, so recovery needs to be treated like a training variable. If your performance is falling, your soreness is lingering, and motivation is dropping, the first fix is often sleep, stress load, and realistic weekly volume. Finally, you need to see recomposition as a spectrum, not a yes or no claim. Sometimes, successful recomp looks like losing fat while maintaining muscle and strength, which is a big win for many lifters. Sometimes it looks like slow fat loss with small but real strength gains and slightly better measurements, which still changes your physique over time. Sometimes it looks like scale weight stable, waist smaller, lifts higher, and photos tighter, which is exactly what you want if your goal is to look athletic and perform well. Your definition of success should match your starting point, your training age, and the timeline you actually have. Part 2. When recomp works and what conditions must be true. Recomposition works best when your body has a strong reason to build muscle and a strong reason to mobilize fat at the same time, and those reasons depend on who you are right now. If you are new to lifting, your nervous system and muscle tissue respond fast because almost any well-designed resistance training is a new stimulus. If you are coming back after a break, you get the same advantage through muscle memory, meaning the body rebuilds lost tissue more easily than it builds brand new tissue. If you have higher body fat, you also have more stored energy available, which makes it easier to support hard training even if food intake is controlled. If you are an intermediate who has been undertraining, recomp can hit hard once you finally train with structure. Undertraining usually means low weekly volume, inconsistent effort, or no progression plan. The moment you move to a program that has repeatable exercises, controlled sets, and a clear overload target, nutrient partitioning improves because the muscle is now demanding resources. This is why two people can eat the same calories and get different results. The one who trains with a real hypertrophy signal is more likely to direct nutrients toward recovery and muscle tissue, while the other is just maintaining. Now let's be honest about the tougher profiles, because this is where people waste months. If you are already lean and highly trained, recomposition becomes much slower because your body has fewer easy wins left. You are closer to your genetic ceiling for muscle gain, and your fat stores are smaller, so the margin for error is tiny. Your training also produces more fatigue per unit of progress. That means small mistakes in calories, sleep, or training effort can overwhelm the recomposition signal. It is still possible, but you need tighter control, and you need to accept that the change might be measured in subtle improvements, not rapid transformations. High life stress and chronic poor sleep can make recomp feel impossible, even if your plan looks perfect. When sleep is short, training performance drops, hunger rises, and recovery slows. When stress is high, consistency tends to break because the brain looks for fast comfort, and adherence becomes the first thing to collapse. High weekly fatigue from too much volume or too much cardio has the same effect. The outcome is not your metabolism is broken. The outcome is that your training stimulus is no longer strong and repeatable, and without that, recomp is just wishful thinking. So, what has to be true for recomp to work, regardless of who you are? First, you need progressive training, meaning your workouts are designed to improve in a measurable way over weeks, not days. Second, Protein intake must be high enough to support recovery and lean mass retention. Third, energy intake must be controlled because random eating destroys the fat loss side of the equation. Fourth, recovery has to be respected because the muscle building signal depends on doing quality work repeatedly. And fifth, you need consistency long enough to see real trends. Consistency means weeks of repeating the same basics, not one perfect day followed by chaos. Energy intake is where most recomp attempts fail, so make this simple and strategic. Maintenance recomp is best when you are a beginner, returning after a break, or already training hard but not extremely lean. At maintenance, you can keep training output high, recover well, and still lose fat slowly as partitioning improves. A slight deficit is often better when you have more fat to lose, and your main goal is leaning out while keeping strength. If you push the deficit too hard, you may lose weight faster, but you usually sacrifice training performance, and that reduces the chance of gaining muscle. Calorie cycling is a tool for adherence and performance. The logic is that you eat a bit more on training days to fuel high output and a bit less on rest days, while keeping the weekly total where you need it. This helps many lifters feel stronger in the gym without losing control of fat loss. The key is weekly averages. Your body does not reset at midnight. If you eat perfectly Monday through Friday, but overshoot on the weekend, your weekly total may land at maintenance or surplus, and fat loss stalls. Track the week, not the mood. Protein targets are the most reliable anchor. For recomposition, a practical range is roughly 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. If you are leaner, older, or deep in a deficit, leaning toward the higher end is often smarter. Distribution matters because muscle protein synthesis responds best to repeated doses. 3 to 5 protein meals works well for most schedules, with each meal containing a meaningful amount, often around 30 to 40 grams depending on body size. Think of each meal as a signal that supports recovery, not just calories. Carbs are your performance currency, and performance drives the training stimulus. If your workouts feel flat, reps fall off, and pumps disappear, you often need better carbohydrate support, especially around training. Carbs refill glycogen, and glycogen lets you do more high-quality reps with good form. More quality reps across weeks equals more overload potential. Low carb can still work for some people, especially if they prefer it, and it improves adherence. But the decision rule is performance plus adherence. If low carb makes you miserable and weaker, it is not discipline, it is a bad strategy. Dietary fat matters too, but mostly as a lever for diet quality, satiety, and long-term adherence. Extremely low-fat diets can be hard to stick to and can make meals feel unsatisfying. Extremely high-fat diets can also backfire because fats are calorie-dense and easy to overshoot, especially with snacks and healthy oils. A practical approach is to keep a reasonable minimum fat intake daily, then allocate the rest of your calories between carbs and protein based on training performance and food preference. The best macro split is the one you can repeat. Now let's build the training side so it actually produces recomposition. You want a hypertrophy-first structure with measurable progression. A strong setup for most people is 3 to 5 lifting sessions per week, each built around a few key compound lifts plus accessory work that targets weak points. Rep ranges like 6 to 10 for compounds and 8 to 15 for accessories work well, with sets taken to about 1 to 3 reps short of failure. Weekly volume around 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group is a useful range, with beginners starting lower and advanced lifters adjusting based on recovery. Progression needs to be specific. Pick a rep range for an exercise, such as 8 to 12, and keep the load the same until you can hit the top of the range with solid form across all sets, then increase weight slightly. That is progression without ego. You can also progress by adding a set over time, but only if recovery remains good and performance is rising. This is why strength work supports hypertrophy. Getting stronger at controlled reps raises the tension you can place on muscle. But hypertrophy work, the repeated hard sets near failure, is what drives the size signal most directly. Cardio should support your goal, not compete with it. In recomposition, cardio is mainly a lever for energy expenditure, heart health, and recovery if chosen well. Too much high-intensity cardio can interfere with leg recovery and reduce performance on squats, deadlifts, and hard lower body sessions. A practical default is 2 to 4 sessions of steady-state cardio per week, 20 to 40 minutes each, at an intensity where you can still speak in short sentences. If you love intervals, keep them limited and place them away from heavy leg training so they do not steal your best reps. The most important cardio rule is protecting strength performance first. If adding cardio makes your lifts drop week after week, you are paying for fat loss with muscle building potential. In that case, reduce cardio volume, lower intensity, or move sessions further from lifting. Also remember that steps are cardio's quiet cousin. A consistent daily step target often delivers fat loss support with less interference than smashing intense conditioning. This is why many successful recomp plans look boring on paper, but produce powerful results in photos and measurements. Time horizon is important. Recomposition is usually slower than a dedicated cut for fat loss and slower than a dedicated surplus for muscle gain. Expect visible changes over months, not days. Track the right indicators: weekly average body weight, waist measurements, progress photos in the same lighting, and performance on a few key lifts. If waist is shrinking and lifts are stable or rising, recomp is working even if scale weight is flat. If everything is stagnant for several weeks, you adjust one variable, not 5. Here is your science snapshot, without drowning you in citations. Controlled studies and repeated experimental setups show that people can add lean mass while losing fat when resistance training is structured, protein is high, and energy intake is controlled. This is very common in beginners and detrained lifters, and it has also been observed in trained athletes under specific conditions, especially when protein intake is pushed higher and training quality remains high. The difference is magnitude. Advanced lean lifters see smaller changes, require tighter control, and often benefit from shorter, more targeted phases if their goal is extreme leanness or maximum muscle gain. Part 3. When recomp doesn't work and how to fix it fast. If recomposition feels like it doesn't work, the first assumption should be that the signal is being drowned out by noise. Recomp is a low-margin process, especially if you are not a total beginner, so tiny errors matter. The goal in this part is not to blame you or to hype you up with slogans. The goal is to diagnose what is actually happening, then change one variable at a time until progress becomes predictable again. When you do this right, recomp stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like a controlled plan you can run, measure, and improve. The most common failure is mistracking because calorie math is slippery in real life. Portion creep is real, liquids count, and just a bite can quietly add up. Restaurant meals, cooking oils, nuts, sauces, and weekend snacks are the classic hidden calories. The trap is thinking you are in a slight deficit while your weekly average is actually at maintenance or above. The fix is not perfection, it's consistency. Track your intake the same way each day, weigh the same few staple foods, and judge progress by weekly averages, not single days. Weekend math is where good plans go to die. You can be disciplined Monday through Friday, then erase the deficit with 2 social meals, a few drinks, and untracked snacks. Nothing is wrong with enjoying life, but you need to understand the physics of it. Recomp only works when the weekly total supports fat loss, while training supports muscle gain. The practical method is to zoom out to the week. If you know weekends are higher, you budget for them by slightly reducing intake on a few weekdays or by increasing steps. You win by controlling the week, not the moment. The next failure mode is undertraining. Random workouts feel productive, but they don't create a clear hypertrophy signal. Muscles grow when they experience high mechanical tension repeatedly, with enough volume and proximity to failure to force adaptation. If your sessions are mostly easy sets, constantly changing exercises, and never progressing, Your body has no reason to add muscle during recomp. A simple proof is performance metrics. If loads, reps, or set quality are not improving over several weeks on your key lifts, the stimulus is probably too weak or too inconsistent. You do not need to train like a maniac, but you do need hard work that is measurable. For most lifters, 3 to 5 lifting sessions per week is plenty if the sets are actually hard. Compounds often live well in the 6 to 10 rep range, accessories in the 8 to 15 range, and most working sets should finish about 1 to 3 reps short of true failure with clean form. If every set ends with, "I could have done 5 more," that's not discipline, it's underloading. Recomp rewards intensity and consistency, not random sweat. A third failure is running a deficit that is too aggressive or adding cardio until recovery collapses. When the deficit is deep, training performance drops, and performance is the currency of muscle gain. Too much cardio, especially hard intervals layered on top of hard leg training, can steal recovery and reduce progression. The warning signs are predictable. Your strength trends down. You dread workouts you used to attack. Your sleep quality drops. Hunger feels constant. And soreness lingers. Recomp cannot survive when fatigue is rising faster than fitness. If you recognize those signs, the fix is strategic restraint. Bring the deficit closer to moderate, protect lifting performance, and choose cardio that supports recovery instead of competing with it. 2 to 4 steady-state sessions per week, 20 to 40 minutes, tends to be easier to recover from than frequent high-intensity work. Steps are also a powerful lever because they increase expenditure with minimal interference. If you increase cardio and your lifts drop for several weeks, you did not get lazy. You overspent your recovery budget. Pull back and rebuild momentum. Protein problems can quietly sabotage recomp even when everything else looks good. If protein is too low or concentrated into one meal, muscle retention becomes harder and hunger becomes louder. A strong recomposition range for many people is roughly 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, expressed across 3 to 5 meals. The beginner move is to anchor each meal with a high-protein food you actually enjoy and can repeat. Convenience matters. If your plan requires gourmet cooking, adherence will break the first time life gets busy. Sustainability is the part people underestimate. You can create a perfect plan on paper and still fail if it is too complex to execute daily. The best protein strategy is boring, repeatable meals, predictable portions, and easy substitutions when you travel or eat out. High-protein swaps are not a personality trait, they are a system. When you keep protein high, you protect muscle, control appetite, and make your calorie target feel easier. That is why protein is not just about muscle biology. It is about behavior, consistency, and reducing decision fatigue. Inconsistent adherence is the sneakiest failure mode because it disguises itself as bad genetics. If you hit your plan 5 days, then drift for 2, your body responds to the average, not your intentions. Recomp demands enough consistency for trends to emerge, and that means weeks of repeating the same baseline behaviors. The reality check is simple. Look at your weekly average intake, weekly average body weight, and weekly training performance. If the averages are not aligned with your goal, the body will not move. This is not punishment, it is feedback. Sleep and stress are not mystical hormones controlling fate, but they are real performance variables. Poor sleep reduces strength, coordination, and motivation, and it increases hunger and impulsive eating. High stress makes consistency harder and recovery slower, which turns hard training into accumulated fatigue instead of adaptation. Practical minimum standards matter. Aim for a stable bedtime routine, enough total sleep to wake without feeling wrecked, and at least a few low-stress recovery practices that you can repeat, like light walks, stretching, or simply reducing late-night screens. Recomp is built on repeatable weeks. Measurement mistakes can also convince you recomp is failing when it's actually working, or make you chase the wrong changes. Daily scale weight fluctuates with water, sodium, glycogen, inflammation from training, and digestion. After hard leg sessions, the scale can jump even if you are losing fat, because muscle damage pulls water into tissue. The pump also changes how you look day to day. You need a dashboard that reflects reality, weekly average body weight, waist measurement under consistent conditions, progress photos in the same lighting, and a few key lifts tracked consistently. Once you have clean data, you need decision rules because endless recomp forever can become a trap. If you are advanced and lean, dedicated phases often outperform recomp. A cut can be short and focused to drop fat, then a lean bulk can be structured to add muscle with high performance. The triggers to switch are not emotions, they are trends. If your waist is not changing, your weekly average weight is not moving in the direction you want, and your training performance is stalling for several weeks, you choose a phase and commit. Clarity beats confusion. Troubleshooting should follow a sequence. First, you verify data because you cannot fix what you cannot measure. Next, you adjust energy intake slightly because huge changes usually create new problems. Then, you lock protein and meal structure because it supports both muscle retention and adherence. After that, you confirm progression in training because recomp without progressive tension is just maintenance. Then you manage cardio so it supports fat loss without stealing recovery. Finally, you improve recovery inputs like sleep and stress control. You reassess after a defined window, not after 2 anxious days. Now here is how to self-diagnose whether recomp is viable for you right now with concrete pathways. If you are a beginner or returning after time off, recomp is usually a great first strategy. Train 3 to 4 days per week, use repeatable lifts, and aim to add reps or load over time while keeping most sets 1 to 3 reps shy of failure. Keep protein high, keep calories around maintenance or a slight deficit, and measure waist and weekly average weight for 4 to 8 weeks. If strength rises and waist shrinks, you stay the course. If nothing moves, you tighten tracking and raise steps before changing everything. If you are an intermediate who has been inconsistent or undertraining, recomp can still work, but you must earn it with structure. Run 4 to 5 sessions per week only if recovery supports it. Otherwise, stay at 3 to 4 and push quality. Hit enough weekly hard sets per muscle to create a clear signal, often around 10 to 16 for major groups, and progress on the same exercises for multiple weeks. Keep calories close to maintenance and use modest cycling if training days need more fuel. Your success signal is stable or improving performance paired with slowly improving waist and photos. If you are advanced, already fairly lean, and your training age is high, recomp becomes a specialist tool, not a default. You can still do it, but the change will be smaller and slower, and the margin for error is tiny. If your goal is visibly lean or fast, a shortcut with performance protection usually wins, followed by a lean bulk to add muscle with intent. If you choose recomp anyway, keep protein high, avoid aggressive deficits, and prioritize lifting performance above cardio. Your viability test is whether you can keep strength stable while nudging body composition over several weeks without accumulating fatigue. Recomp works when you stop guessing and start controlling the variables that matter. Train with a real growth signal 3 to 5 times per week. Keep most working sets close to failure and make progression measurable, even if it's just 1 more rep this week. Keep protein high every day and spread it across your meals so you recover and stay full. Pick an energy target you can actually repeat for weeks, not days, and judge progress by weekly averages, your waist, your photos, and your key lifts, not by one random weigh-in. If your strength is climbing and your waist is shrinking, don't change anything. Stay patient and let the trend build. If nothing moves for several weeks, it's all right. Tighten tracking, adjust calories slightly, and use steps or light cardio as your first lever because recovery protects muscle. And if you're already lean and advanced, be honest, a shortcut or a lean bulk might outperform recomp, but either way, the same rule applies. Your body follows what you do consistently, not what you do perfectly once.